Good evening, everyone, and welcome to WANA Live, the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm Damian Dressick, and this is my co-host,
Christina Sonic. How are you this evening, Damian?
Oh, it's a long day living in Reseda, Christina. It's also a long day living in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. How are things in Wheeling?
Wheeling is very good. Beautiful day out. Cannot complain. Gorgeous blue skies, some nice puffy clouds, and no rain. So cannot complain over here. So tonight we have something a little different for our audience.
We've got an excellent show this evening.
Yes, I'm really excited about this. This is the first time we have ever had a painter on our show.
Good. My kitchen could really wait. It's not that kind of painter, is it?
No. So tonight we have a fantastic painter from the region, and let me introduce him to everyone. I see you have his book there in your hand. So let's talk about Ron. Ron Donoughe is a native of Loretto, Pennsylvania, and he now lives in Pittsburgh. He's best known for his spirited, realistic landscape paintings of Western Pennsylvania. He has a BA in art education from Indiana University of Pennsylvania and has studied at the California College of Arts and Crafts in Oakland, California. Like many painters, and I know you'll appreciate this, Damian, he has held a variety of odd jobs: landscaper, gravedigger, chicken catcher, art teacher, museum installer, graphic designer, and college instructor. He works full-time now as a professional artist painter. His work can be found in many corporate and private collections, as well as the Southern Alleghenies Museum of Art, the Westmoreland Museum of American Art, and the University Museum at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Ron's interest in plain art painting led to the formation of the Plain Art Painters of Western Pennsylvania. The group meets informally to paint Pittsburgh from April through November. In addition, his work has appeared in 12 films, which were shot in the Pittsburgh region. And you're holding up his newest book, Brownsville to Braddock. Are we ready to bring Ron on the show?
Let's hear from Ron. I'm excited.
Me too. This is awesome. Hey, Ron, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on as your first painter. I'm honored.
This is fantastic. So tonight you're going to talk to us about some of the paintings from your newest book, right?
Correct.
And
we're very grateful that you're able to be on.
Yeah.
And you're going to put a slideshow up, and I'm just going to kind of narrate what the project was about.
Yes, absolutely. So, Damian, would you like to stay on the screen, or would you like for me to?
I think people are here to see Ron's terrific work, not my hat.
Okay. All right. I will make you disappear and me disappear, and we'll bring up Ron's work. So I was given some wonderful images here from your collection, and let me share.
Okay. Well, that's the cover art for the book.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a hardback, 135 pages, and it was the publication was produced by the University of Pittsburgh Press. That they expressed an interest after I spent a year painting in the Mon Valley from Brownsville to Braddock. So that's actually the Clarendon works right there. So you want to just kind of roll through these, and okay. These are in no particular order, so I'll just tell you about this. This is many of your viewers may have visited the Cary Furnace, and it was actually just a little bit outside the Brownsville to Braddock geographic perimeters, but Rivers of Steel that run the Cary Furnace offered to be a part of my project, so they allowed me on the property to paint. I had full access, and the Cary Furnace is a National Historic Landmark. So if you get there and do tours, it's fantastic. So that is okay. Here we are, right down the stream in Braddock. That's the Mon Valley works, and I've been painting there for many years, probably almost 30 years on and off. Okay. Most of the paintings were done right on location. In other words, it's called en plein-air. It's a French term for painting on site it's actually means in the open air. But on occasion in this project over the year, I wasn't able to paint on location. And one of those paintings you're looking at right now is Kennywood. That's obviously the Thunderbolt. And those are the only figures that were painted in this series. But I felt like that was done from an iPhone photo, but I wanted to get the excitement of the riders coming over the crest of that, screaming. You could almost hear them. Reminded me of taking my kids there. This was done in McKeesport. It reminded me of my hero, Edward Hopper, how he might have handled this. These houses are, when I did them, I thought they kind of looked like faces on the front, so they had some character to them. And they were in shadow, on a bluff. Kind of an interesting arrangement, I thought, of these homes, and there's an austerity about them, but a hopefulness with the light that kissed the side of the buildings. I'm very much attracted to architecture, and this was an example of pulling into a parking lot at an Eaton Park in McKeesport and looking across the street and noticing this. That's also McKeesport. That's the cemetery there. It's a fantastic cemetery if you get a chance to visit it. But I wanted to do something, because this was done over 12 months. I wanted to show everything: the river, the parks, the factories, the river life, and even the cemeteries. And this, I was kind of taken by the beauty of this cemetery, even though there's a lot of headstones that are kind of pushed over. It's a fantastic park to walk in if you've never been there. This is the entrance to the Clairton work. Painting plumes and the steel mills, something I've really enjoyed doing. It's quite a challenge because it's a moving target. As the wind changes, so do the plumes and the light on the plumes. I'm an identical twin, so when I see twin plumes or twin chimneys, anything, I'm kind of taken towards it, and I want to paint it. This is another one from Clairton. These 4 square houses reminded me of just how important living next to the mill was to all these towns, these river towns. People were situated right next to the mills for easy access. I love the light and the shadow. And I'll do this thing where the shadow from one building is on another one. Just even outside the photo of the picture plane, it gives the viewer an idea that there's actually more going on there than is on the image. So it creates the illusion that you're actually on site. I probably was trespassing to do this painting. It was something I had in mind. It was to get the barges on the river with the mill in the background, with the reflection in the water. Just had the overall texture of what I was seeking in the Mon Valley. And I did this project basically because I didn't know a whole lot about it. I'm just reading about it over many years, but I'd never ventured as far south to paint as Brownsville and California, Monessen, Donoughe. So that was part of it. And I started in Brownsville because that was the southernmost point, and the river flows north to Pittsburgh. It just seemed like the right amount of space. It may have been about 40 miles of river that I explored over 12 months. Again, there's the Braddock, or I'm sorry, the Clairton works. You'll notice a tiny little flame on the lower part of that. Not exactly sure what they're burning off there, but this was one of the first paintings, and it was right after a big fire occurred at that plant. It's a coke plant, and it was a pretty pungent smell of sulfur in the air. And I wasn't aware at the time that a big fire had happened, but it was I was thinking, boy, these folks live where in a place where it's actually difficult to breathe. This is interesting painting because I did it on about a 12-degree morning. My fingers were freezing, and there was no plume, and I assumed that it just wasn't operational at that day. But it turned out when I got back to my studio, I painted in the plume, which happened to be a big mistake because the coal-fired plant had been idled for about 5 years. So I titled this painting "Imaginary Plume," and it's kind of unfortunate that I faked that in there, but I kept imagining that it's easier to imagine a plume on there than imagine a plant like that being restarted or found another use for it. This is Donoughe. Many people associate Donoughe with the inversion of, I think it was 1943, where about 20 people died and hundreds were injured from the air pollution. It was hard to imagine that when I was there that day painting this. It was November, beautiful light. I was taken by these inclined plane of the hillsides that go in towards the river, and the light on the sides of the houses, and these city steps where I watched lots of folks getting their steps in literally in the morning. And boy, they have a climb going up there. This is Monessen. I believe this plant has since been idled. I like that plume on there and this kind of simple geometry of this painting. And a lot of times when I'm out working, I get people to come up and speak to me or kind of camp out behind me. And in this case, it was a mailman parked behind me and just started telling me the story of the town and the politics and everything that he wanted to talk about. I guess they figure I'm not going anywhere for a couple hours, so he was probably on a lunch break. This is also Monessen. This is one of my favorite pieces of architecture that I painted, and it's a huge building. I believe it's the old Monessen Savings and Loan, and it's as you can see, the weeds are growing on the ledges. The windows are all knocked out, but it's still. It looks like structurally it's sound, and I love the light and shadow. And I just decided to do a section of this building because these paintings are not that large. They're 12 by 16 inches. And I really couldn't get far enough away from it to get a good view. So I decided to do a section of it. This was funny when I was working there. A young woman leaped across the street holding her cell phone towards me and exclaiming that she was an artist as well and had a photo of a boat on her iPhone. She'd done it from a tutorial. It's funny how I have these random interactions with people when I'm out working. They're kind of surprised to see an artist just set up someplace where they've never seen one before. You see all kinds of stuff when you're out painting, and I love this antique store. It was, I think it was Monongahela, and these or Charleroi. I'm sorry, I can't forget. There's so many paintings that I've done. But I love these huge creatures that look like they were going to take the flag and march down the street. It's pretty funny. And this was an attempt to add some humor to the project because there are a lot of houses that were overtaken by nature, and there's a lot of stuff that is not fun. But I thought this added some humor to the project. This is Bell Vernon, Water Street. And when I went down to Bell Vernon to paint, I was going to do the marina across the river. But as I stood under this bridge, I was enamored by the texture of the water and the patina of age on these stones and the light and shadow there. And the train was going over, like right over overhead, and the boats and the barges were were drifting through the water. And it was really interesting to me to think about the how important transportation was for materials on the Monongahela, and how the railroads and the rivers were the super highways, especially back in the pioneer days, and they still are. This is Brownsville, Nemacolin Castle. It was being restored the day I was there. They were painting on it, and we just wanted to. It's such a spectacular Victorian piece of architecture, and I really wanted to convey some of the historic structures of the region and the beauty that is there. And part of the project was to shine a light on an area that gets some bad press or no press at all at times. There's so much to experience in the Mon Valley, and part of it for me was exploring that. I just read a book from David McCall about the pioneers that came from the Northeast down to Brownsville and got on the flatboats and went up to Pittsburgh and then on to the west. Brownsville was a pivotal area and quite important to the whole region. So as this shows you, this was an important spot. It actually was a trading post. So did you have some questions for me, Christina? Okay.
Yes.
There you are.
We're back. It was a little bit of a trickery back there with the slideshow going on and trying to bring us back on. How about you, Damien? Do you have some questions for Ron or some comments about his work?
Well, one of the things I was looking at the picture of the Thunderbolt, and my first thought before you mentioned Hopper was, well, you have to have the people in it because everyone's just going to assume Edward Hopper painted Kennywood without the people. So you could I'd love to. I'm also a big. I actually, my daughter is very grateful that she was born female, because otherwise her name would have been Hopper. Yes, she's. Dad, it would sound like a frog. She's grateful that her name is not Hopper. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the influence of Hopper on your work, because it's. I mean, I see what you're doing, and it's hard not to think about some of his work.
Well, it's funny that you asked. Let me just turn around for a second. I keep this real close by. It's and these pages are actually deer or dog-eared the book, because I marked these pages. There's a lot to be learned about his work, even his watercolors, and I don't know. Something resonated with his work, but I liked architecture a lot. But it was actually his teacher, who was Robert Henry, and it's called the Ashcan School, that taught him and George Bellows. It was a whole group of painters that they did something very significant in art history at the turn of the century, and that's they started painting life around them. They started looking at their own towns and the streets, and started painting the parks and the boxing matches and everything, that even the horses on the street. And before that, artists were glamorizing the rich and doing stuff that was popular in France at the time, where most of them had studied. So this was significant, and I was very influenced, not just by Hopper's work, but although you can see the influence visually, but the idea that we should really document what we know and what we feel strongly about. And that's his biggest influences to me is documenting the region. And I think he did a really good job of he documented so much, but there's also an austerity to what he did. He was calling on an inner life that he had, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first thing I was thinking was this idea of what is worthy of art, like what gets to be painted, what gets to be shown off as this is us. This is something that we think needs to be represented in the in the plastic arts, and so I really like what you were doing there. So, and it was part of, I think, the thing with Hopper's, some of what you were painting comes from that it could have been painted by Hopper because it was there then.
Right. Part part of it for me is I've been doing this for 30 years, and I want to leave a legacy that I believe could be someday historical documents visually. A lot of people are doing photography, and there's nothing. I don't want to disparage that, but the painters leave a trail that it's quite important. And I just didn't feel like a lot of other artists were taking a close, intimate look at where we are. And like the Mon Valley, it was. I just thought, wow, I can't believe this hasn't been documented by other artists, at least in my knowledge recently.
Well, I'm sorry. I think that the only other artist that I know his work well enough, it would be Frank Malega from Brownsville, because he documented a lot of coal mining and a lot of things like that. But his work he was also a commercial artist and all kinds of other things. And you're exactly right. There are things that he painted from our history in Northern Appalachia that are no more, and that there are no photos of. And if it wasn't for his work, we wouldn't have that. And when I saw your work of the Cary Furnace, which we know is not, no matter how much we try to preserve it, it won't last forever.
That's right. We're our society, especially economically and historically, we're in a state of big flux right now.
Yeah.
And so I see this transition period. And especially where I live in part of Pittsburgh, near the Strip District, all these big shiny buildings are going on, and it just seems like visually things are changing quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to do the post-industrial look at the Monongahela Valley.
And there's such a gorgeous starkness to your work.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe there's a little sense of sadness in some of it. It's hard to get away from that, but that's why I was pointing out to the rooster and the cow, because every now and then I feel like I have to kick it up a notch, and that it's not. I don't get sad about seeing so many houses that were vacated or burned.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea of imagining them picking up that flag and going on a parade down the street. That's fantastic. And I think
it's a good idea sometimes to make a painting, and it helps to imagine it as a finished painting rather than just a photograph. And that's what I do. People say, "How did you select that?" And the only way I can answer is that it picks me. I also feel like I have to see it from a painter's point of view, not exactly a photographer, but imagine how it could work as a finished painting, which Damien had said, what allows you to, what do you select to be painted? Because it's quite an effort to make it happen. So when I see it, hopefully I'm selecting something that I think is worthwhile.
Well, we have some people who don't, I'm so sorry, Damien. Go ahead. There's some comments and I want to put on the screen. Go ahead.
I wanted to just say one of my favorite pieces was the houses up on with the stone wall in front. I'm not.
The McKees.
Yes, I was thinking McKees Rocks. Like that was not right. Yeah, it was this kind of commemoration. In this, I don't know. I think sometimes people come in from out of the area and take images, mostly photographs, not painting, but there's sort of a poverty porn is what, people call it. And I think it's really amazing that you're doing exactly the opposite. There's something very valuable in the documentation of how working people live.
Yeah. I feel like there's an integrity to these homes, and the people lived in them were hard workers, blue collar. I wanted that to come through.
Definitely. I mean, and I think
my roots. Sorry, Christina.
Oh no, I mean, it just reminds me of Cement City over in Donora, and how people think that, well, all these homes look the same, all these houses look the same. Well, they might to somebody outside that community, but not to the people who live there. They know all the subtleties and the differences, and that's where the Franks live, or where the Joneses live, or whoever they are, and they are unique. And I think that comes out in your work. They're not just these nondescript places, but I see so much heart in your work.
That's part of the reason I like painting on location, is because people come out of the woodwork and will tell me stories about the neighborhood.
So cool.
And that really energizes me, and I believe that somehow that spirit comes out the end of my arm when I'm hearing about the stories and the people. That it's quite meaningful.
Yes, and you can see it in your work for sure.
So, do you want to open it up to some of your guests? Did you say you had questions?
Well, we just have a couple of comments over here. Brenda Sowards Boylan joined us, and she says that she loves your paintings, which is good. And one of our regular viewers, Joe, says not only does she love your art, and you're one of her favorite artists, but she has some of your work at her home, which is great. And I think that's all we have. Sometimes we get a lot of comments, and then if you come back to our page later this week, you'll find tons more comments and feedback as people view it throughout the week. But we can't thank you enough for being on. You have anything you want to add, Damien?
Well, I wanted to ask, Ron, where so I know that people can see these at the Westmoreland Museum of Art.
Yes.
And they can purchase this book. Where can they get this book, Ron?
It's in the local bookstores as well as Barnes and Noble now. So it's pretty widely distributed. Amazon has it. University of Pittsburgh Press has it on their site, but it's pretty easy to find now.
Okay.
And Bookshop has it. And I know that you're coming to Cal U for an exhibit in November, because we are super excited about that. Will your work be anywhere else between now and then? No. The show has been sort of postponed, but I was going to have it at the Rivers of Steel, but that's the only thing lined up. So that's it right now. Well, we feel really lucky. We're getting an exclusive.
Yes, you are.
We can't wait. We're looking forward to it.
But I look forward to, if it does make Rivers of Steel, I'm very much looking forward to seeing it there.
Yeah, it might be next year. Daniel.
Okay.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Ron, for being on the show. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in tonight. And we will see you this week. Same time, same window. Next week.
We'll see you next week.
It's an honor.
All right.
Thank you so much, Ron.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Hey, have a good night, y'all. Thanks for watching.